All right, guys, REVan Evan here. We're up at New Media Dragway, hanging out with my man Bobby Fazio. And if you love classic Mustangs, you're gonna love his little stick shift super stock small block. High winding, ton of fun, ramming the gears. Bobby, what do you love about this car?
The sound of it. The sound on the starting line when those lights start coming down,
right?
And I bring it up to launch RPM. I've never heard another car in the other lane launch a car before, because what I'm hearing is just music, loud music.
Yep.
And then ripping through the gears.
Small blocks screaming. Now, your dad raced this car before you, long family history, so tell us a little bit about the car.
It's a 65 Mustang.
Right.
Dad built the car in 1987 while I was in preschool. And he went out to Michigan to get it. I was really angry he was leaving me at home to go to preschool.
Right.
But yeah, he raced it from, I'd say, 88 to 91-ish.
Right.
And he had a little bit of success in it. And the car sat in our garage then. He decided to take 1992 off.
Okay.
And that turned into a 18-year hiatus where the car sat in our garage. We got it back out in 2009-ish, and I've been driving it ever since. It's a 65 Mustang right now, 289, 225 horse. NHRA rates it at 209.
Right. How much power is it really making?
Making, well, I'd say about 475-ish, maybe 500 horsepower.
Nice. So super stock rules means he's got to use the factory carburetor, the factory heads, and a Ford block, but you can kind of use any pistons and any valve train in super stock, right?
Any valve train, the valves have to be the stock size. It's an original cast crankshaft.
Right.
Like you said, factory carburetor, which is very small in this, about 470 CFM, and any manifold one.
That's cool, right? Super stock, and you can port the heads. You got to use stock valve sizes.
Stock valve sizes, you can't make them any larger.
Right.
The runner volumes have to stay with NHRA specs at the factory runner sizes.
Right. So it's 289, but it's a little bigger because you can slightly increase the stroke within the tolerance of the blueprinting rules, and you can bore it a little bit within the spec, but you're still breathing through really the factory carburetor and the factory style head. Even though you can port the heads, you're stuck with the stock valve size. It's not like you can just put any head on there and, you know, 8,000 plus RPM. You'll hear it on the starting line in a few minutes. All right, here's the cockpit of Bobby's 65 Mustang. You can see he's got the long engineering shifter on the 4-speed. You running a Jerico?
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Jerico 4-speed. So when I roll into the burnout box in first gear, and I go 2-3. I do my burnouts in third gear. I don't shift during a burnout. And I bring it up, bring up the R's, pop the clutch, get the tire spinning for a couple seconds. I don't do long burnouts, and roll it out. This is the magic button that I have to remember to hit every time after a burnout. I gotta hit that launch button because now my line lock, that was a line lock shortly, a couple seconds ago, is now a rev limiter tied into the clutch pedal down here. I set a little brake pressure, which locks the line lock and holds the rev limiter at the same time, and I push through the line lock to get up to the starting line. So I don't bump in like an automatic car. I actually roll in up against brake pressure to just try and be consistent every single time. I'm up about 4,000 or 5,000 RPM. As soon as the top bulb comes on and the lights start coming down, I hit the throttle to the floor. Brings me up to launch RPM, which varies from track to track. It can be anywhere from 7,000 to 8,500 RPM. As soon as the last yellow comes on, I'm popping the clutch. I'm in second gear before I'm even at the 60-foot cone. Coming down from a wheelie, second gear, and then third gear and fourth gear by the time I'm at the 330-foot mark, and then I'm cruising. For me, it turns into an automatic after that. I move my left foot over to the brake pedal, 2 hands on the wheel, and I'm looking for the other guy. If it's an elimination run, I'm looking for the other guy. If it's qualifying, I keep everything in place. I check some gauges and go on about my run. When I go through the finish line, shove the clutch in and I shut the ignition off. That way, if I want to read any plugs, I can get a nice accurate reading. I go through the traps probably about 9,000 RPM. It shows on the graph, depends on track to track. Here we're at high elevation, not making quite as much power, so a couple hundred RPM lower. But I mean, Cecil County in October or Maple Grove Dutch Classic, this thing is really singing through the lights. The rear here, we have a Ford 9-inch rear built by my dad, Bob Fazio, and we have a pretty steep gear ratio, if you will. We run a 620 gear in this car.
Wow.
And a 329 first gear. So we really turn the RPM in this car.
So Bobby, stock, super stock stick cars, one of the most important components is the clutch. What are you running for a clutch?
We run a McLeod soft lock clutch, single disc, 10.5-inch diameter. So we're a little behind the times. Many people are switching to smaller discs, dual discs, and we're kind of old school, using the old school equipment. It works for us, so we don't really want to change anything.
And so Bobby also is heavily involved in stock, super stock racing. He has a Fox Body Mustang that he runs in Stock Eliminator, and you have a podcast, which is Class Racing Today. So real quick, tell us about your podcast.
Well, the podcast was created to promote stock and super stock racing. We want everybody, the average spectator, anybody that's never even been to a racetrack, to realize that stock and super stock are the greatest car show on earth. So you see muscle cars rumbling down the track doing giant wheel stands.
Right.
Muscle cars doing what they were originally intended to do when they were built. So that's what we do. We discuss that in any ways to get new people into stock and super stock racing.
Yep, you can hear the guys warming up in the background. The cars cruising by, everybody's getting their engines ready. Bobby is a big promoter of the sport. He and myself and Bobby's dad, who's on the camera right now, have been friends for a long, long time. I got pictures of this car from when I used to live up here and work up here, and it's great to see you out here racing. We'll give you a look at the car here in a few seconds, and then we're going to do a little in-car camera, and we'll show how Bobby rams the gears, lets the clutch out. It's going to be a fun day. Thanks a lot, man.
All right, thank you, Evan.
You got it.